So if you're one of the unfortunate nerds that happens to live in Birmingham, Alabama, or anywhere around that area, I'm happy to report that Comic-Con is probably one of the best conventions in Alabama, but unfortunately is also one of the only ones as of right now. As always, I'd like to emphasize that this opinion is completely subjective and personal and using completely anecdotal evidence based on my own personal experiences, and it is no way an objective review of the convention based on any kind of legitimate criteria. It's just based on my personal experiences and what I personally derive value from when going to a convention. So I first went to Comic Con in 2013. Up until then, from 2009 to 2012, we had been going to Con-Nuga in Chattanooga, Tennessee, obviously, which takes place at the same time as Comic Con typically. There's been years since then where they've been separate. We've been able to do both. But Con-Nuga was kind of starting to take a turn for the worse after 2012. So I decided in 2013, like, we did Con-Nuga 4 years in a row. So I'm going to try to make it to Comic-Con regardless if they're on the same weekend or not. And huge shout out to my friend Wesley for introducing me to Comic-Con and insisting year after year after I first met him, again in 2009, that I go to Comic-Con. And it was well worth it when I finally did. Now, let's talk about the venue a little bit. So Comic-Con takes place downtown at the Birmingham Convention Center, the BJCC, and it's a pretty good venue for a convention, I will say. I think the allotted space that the convention center has given to the con is comparable to that of MetroCon, if not maybe a little bit better, because you have the 3 levels of elevation, and where the panel rooms and video rooms and all that, it does feel pretty separate from where the big open hanging out area is and where the dealer's room is. And so I like that they were able to do that and not have everything too cluttered. Now, back in 2013 when I first went, and when I went again in 2014 and 15, the dealer's room was on the bottom floor. So you go from the hotel to the convention center on a sky bridge, and there's a big open area where registration is, and then off there's an escalator with 3 levels, and the top level is where most of the video rooms and panel rooms are, and the bottom level was where the dealer's room was. When I went again in 2018, however, they moved the dealer's room from that bottom level into across from registration into the like hall B or C or whatever of the convention center. So in more recent years, they have expanded to encapsulate more of the venue and utilize more of it to its fullest potential, which I think is really cool. Kind of similar to how MomoCon has done, but I would actually compare, again, Comic-Con closer to MetroCon or to AWA in terms of the growth over multiple years. It hasn't grown, like, you won't go 1 year and then the next year it's like doubled in size. It's a very small incremental growths, and they have a very stable long-term attendance base of fans that continue to go year after year. So in terms of programming and content, funny enough, Comic-Con was actually the very first con I ever did a panel at, and that was the very, very first Fate panel with Wesley, and that was kind of what sparked a lot of where we are today with the Fate panels we do with the larger Type Moon Universe Southeast cosplay group. So back then, we had no idea what we were doing. Wesley had hosted a few panels before at Comic-Con, but this is the first time that I was kind of getting over the stage fright and getting up there and talking. And I felt like it went fairly well for who I was at that time, but now I'm a lot more extroverted and a lot more comfortable with public speaking and not having run-off sentences with lots of ums and uhs in there, so I could do a panel a lot better nowadays, but for its time, that was pretty alright. Comic-Con has always kind of prided themselves on getting pretty good guests as well. So it's pretty much your middle of the road in terms of quality. Like it's almost, I would consider it better than MetroCon, but not quite up there with MomoCon and AWA. And definitely not up there with, your Katsucon and your Otakon and the really, really big ones, or your Anime Expo. But they do get some good guests. So in the past, they have had John Young Bosch, they have had Michelle Ruff, who I met there before. They had, one of the coolest ones they had was in 2015, they had the Cowboy Bebop reunion, where they had the voice cast of the 4, I guess you could say, main characters of Cowboy Bebop, all come together at the same convention and do a panel together about Bebop. And it was the first time that the 4 of them have ever had like a reunion an industry related reunion since the series ended or since they did the movie. So I thought that was pretty cool to see them kind of catch up. You know, maybe they have interpersonal friendships, maybe they don't. The stories they told, and Steve Bloom is just awesome. Like, he's such a cool guy, and I am such a big fan of a lot of his work. And the dude is practically in everything. Like, he's never out of work because his voice is so unique and special, I guess you could say. So they had the for those of you that they had the cast of RWBY there back before RWBY was like super popular. And they also had, if those of you are familiar with internet web series from the mid to late 2000s, they had the cast and the cast slash producers of Marble Hornets there, which is a found footage horror web series from like 2012-ish, around that time. And they were there, and that was really cool to be able to meet them as well, having been big fans of them at the time. Again, in terms of the dealer's room and the vendors that are there, can't complain about that. Pretty good selection. There wasn't any booths that I was really concerned about bootlegs at. It's not like some of the very small anime conventions where you have to worry about the screening process for vendors and artists and about the potential for bootlegs. Again, I would really compare this dealer's room to Holiday Matsuri, MetroCon, or like early MomoCon. In terms of the quantity and quality of vendors there. Not a whole lot in terms of artists. It seems like most of the artists, again, were selling $20 anime prints, and not a whole lot of handmade, unique art pieces like what we have at Dragon Con. And it seems like those types of more different and niche forms of art are becoming more and more scarce these days with anime conventions. The one thing I will say as well is that this venue does not lend itself to photo shoots very well. It's not explicitly stated exactly where the boundaries of the convention are, and so if you go outside or wander around, chances are you're not going to have a good spot for a photo shoot. There is a pretty big staircase. The staff of the convention center will probably ask you not to block that staircase. I've actually never hosted a photo shoot at this con because it just seems to me that photo shoots have in the past not been part of the culture of this con. We've caught a few small private photo shoots before, but even if we tried to organize like a Fate shoot or a Fire Emblem shoot or something like that, we wouldn't have as big of a representation at this con anyway, so it just seemed kind of not worth it. But going forward, we may change that in the future if the convention continues to grow. But as I said, it does continue to occupy more and more of the convention center as the con grows, but it just doesn't seem like it necessarily lends itself well to big photo shoots. So if you're going here expecting to break out a big cosplay and do a big photo shoot, probably going to be disappointed by that. The convention just doesn't lend itself to that, and it just doesn't seem to culturally just be there with the attendees. I think that, again, Holiday Matsuri, MomoCon, AWA, much more so lend themselves to large photo shoots than Comic-Con does, but it doesn't detract from the experience. I think if there's anything you're looking to go to this convention to do, it would be to have chill hangout with your existing friends. It's a pretty good opportunity to meet new friends because it's just small enough, kind of like I said about Holiday Matsuri, to maintain that small con atmosphere where you can actually stop and have a conversation with somebody you've never met about whatever your fandom is and get to know them and make friends that way. And we've actually made quite a few friends that way at this con. In terms of the party atmosphere, like the raves and the drinking and the room parties and that kind of thing, it's there. It's definitely noticeable, but it's not terrible. So people do come out just to party, and there is a rave, although they made the mistake one year of having the rave on the second floor of the hotel, of the convention center rather, and so they had to tell them to like stop jumping because there's like chandeliers on the bottom level that you're swinging back and forth. It was stupid. It was kind of a disaster. And the hotel itself is very nice. It's also very well located. So, like I said, it's just a Skybridge walk away. It feels very similar to the setup that MetroCon has with the hotel that's connected by the Skybridge, but it feels just a little bit closer and more convenient. And The hotel is pretty big and spread out, although the hotel is technically not part of the convention venue. So don't try to go into the hotel to have photo shoots or anything like that. It's not a good idea. And the rooms are very nice, and there's never been a big wait for an elevator or anything like that. We technically only got a room in the Con Host Hotel in 2018. In 2013, 14, and 15, we just stayed at Wesley's house because he was within pretty close driving distance from the con. Another plus about the venue is you do have good proximity to food. So there's a little convenience store and a restaurant within the hotel, but that's not really worth your time necessarily. And on the outside of the hotel around the corner is a Subway that usually has a line around the corner from people trying to get quick and easy food. And there's a couple little food stands in the convention center proper. But that's something that has actually grown over the years because I remember back in 2013 and 14, there would be vending machines inside the convention center that would be completely sold out of everything because people would use them and everything would go empty and there'd be nothing left by the end of the first day. That being said, there are vending machines inside the hotel if you know where to go, and you can always take advantage of those. And if you're feeling adventurous, like you want to go out to eat or something, there are a couple of restaurants that are sort of on the same street as the convention center itself that are easy to walk to, and we definitely took advantage of those during 2018 when we had our room and we had better access to food. So we took a walk down the street, and there's quite a few restaurants similar to that way of Dragon Con. Like when you're already in the city, you might as well just walk to a nearby restaurant. But that being said, the variety of food in downtown Birmingham is significantly less than of the variety of downtown Atlanta because you're pretty much just going to have all Americanized food in like sports bars because it's Birmingham. So there's like a really cool like Philly cheesesteak place that's kind of a hole in the wall, kind of has that grungy, grimy feel to it, but it's cool at the same time. And there's a couple of sports bars. Everything we went to was good though. So I think that about sums up my opinion of Comic-Con, with Hamacon biting the dust and Sakoshi-Con basically not even being a thing. Comic-Con remains the one mainstay big convention in Birmingham. It's not nearly on the same scale as something like MomoCon and AWA, but it's comparable to something like MetroCon or Holiday Matsuri. And if you're in Birmingham, it is not only, like I said, one of the last cons that's remaining, but it's also one of the best. So if you're local to Georgia or Florida, I also think it's worth the drive to check it out. So if you guys have not been to Comic-Con, then definitely go check it out. And if you guys went this year or are planning on going, definitely let me know what you guys thought. And I will see you guys on the next review, which is going to be an interesting one. I don't really know how to tackle this next one. Most of the reviews I've done have been overwhelmingly positive, but I don't think that's going to apply to this next one. So I'll see you guys then.